on creating an unfortunate moat by editing as well as rehearsing video production. Now, in the beginning, I have to maybe explain what a moat is. Now, in kind of business, there's this concept that so first of all, what is a classical moat? If you have a castle, a medieval castle, and there is a moat around it, it's basically, you dug kind of this thing out, and then there is water in it, and people have to swim over it in order to get to the castle. And then you have the bridge, which then can be elevated and brought down again in order to go in and out of the castle. But it, by definition, is a little bit harder to get into the castle. Now, in business, the moat describes the same thing just for a company or for a business concept. So if a company has a moat, this means that they have something which is kind of hard to get into. So basically, this could be lots of patents. This could be something like Mr. Beast, for example, who spends lots of money on his videos, which many other people might not be able to do because they just don't have that much money from the videos. So now, for myself, I had this idea now for years that I needed to make these very good YouTube videos. And the idea is still in my head, actually. And maybe also a podcast, and maybe also a couple of other things. Now, and the same is true for music, the same is true for many other things. So what the commonality between all of those is that there is a standard that I try to adhere to. Now the question is, in which time frame one tries to implement this standard? Now ideally, one would have infinite computational power. One would be infinitely intelligent and could just basically make the video as perfect as one imagined one would make the video, or the final product, or the final music piece, or maybe the presentation at work, and so on and so forth. But the limitations of everyday life, of time, of basically sometimes being tired and so on and so forth kick in. So the product that one is able to create has basically a different quality compared to what one would imagine one would be able to do within a short time frame. So now the question is, how does one bridge this quality gap? And there are basically now, if we define it as such, 3 time frames one could bridge this gap. The first is the short, the second the mid, and the third is the long term. Now, the more long term the approach is, the more it takes, the longer time it takes, or the more time it takes. And of course now with mid and short term, kind of the reverse. So by editing now a video, and by scripting a video, and by then rehearsing to make this video again and again, one is basically not using what the current skill one already has, but one temporarily is basically creating a higher quality thing. Now, if one scripts something, one would not be able to have a talk just to a friend, for example, in the same quality, because one is able to rehearse basically again and again, because one is able to read and then rewrite and take out the mistakes. And also one can maybe think a little bit more about it, because one has basically a slower writing speed compared to a speaking speed. Now, if one then also rehearses the voiceover again and again and again to make it more and more perfect, then one is also making this better. Then one goes into the video editing, and one begins to get all these different things, these different media types. Maybe one also improves one's voice by adding compressor, by adding something else, by removing noise, and so on and so forth. And so one is creating this polished, more and more polished product that is kind of more and more that deviates more and more from what one is actually able to create just instantaneously. And so this process of creating something that is drawn more and more away from what one is actually able to do in the current moment. So if I would ask you on the street, what would be the 10 minutes of what you would be saying on this topic, and the next 10 minutes you would have time to say something on this, it probably would not be as perfect as a 10-minute video you spent 50, 100 hours on. Now, I did spend 50 maybe hours on videos before, not necessarily for the internet, but more for kind of private projects. And there is lots of editing, and then the drives crash, and then your computer crashes, and then there is lots of latency involved because computers are not as fast as one would like them to be. What I'm trying to say here is the following. One creates a moat by not using the skill one already has. Of course, one could also describe this larger process as a skill, as polishing this product more and more. But if I am able to, instead of only creating the product with kind of additional work and rehearsing in every single step, basically, if I instead would be able to create a product kind of instantaneously, then this product would be probably much less good, so have lesser quality, or would be lesser in quality. But what this then allows me to do is to go in and out of the castle all the time. So the bridge is always open. I can, whenever I have an idea, turn this into a product, because I am maybe a citizen of the castle's empire. So I can go in and out of the moat. Whereas if I try to adhere to this high standard of, okay, I need to make something like this again, and I invested so much time into this presentation, and I spent 3 nights awake, and I drank 10 cups of coffee during this time, and I don't know if I will ever be able to do this again, then one is basically closed out of the castle, because every time one tries to enter the castle, one otherwise has to conquer the moat one has built oneself.